Hello, Karen. Thank you for being here. Please.
Thank you for having me here.
So, Karen, thanks for being here. Can you give us a word of explanation on the structure of AH Industries and your activities, please?
Yes, we are a manufacturing company. We have 4 locations, 3 factories in Denmark and 1 in China. We have approximately 350 employees worldwide. So the local factories is not that big, but our customers are international, our suppliers are international, so we have multi-languages in our setup in Odoo, and we also have multi-currencies and a multi-company. I think we have 8 or 9 companies in our multi-company, even though we only have 4 factories. So that's the complexity. So it's a kind of a small, medium-sized company, but we have the complexity of a big company.
So if I understand well, you talk multi-company, you talk multi-currency, you talk about linguistic constraints.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds complex indeed. Could you describe us the context in which you chose Odoo, please?
Yes, we are currently running in Microsoft Navision. That's it. I don't know how many knows it, but it's a very well-known ERP system in Denmark because it originates from Denmark. And we have 3 different setups because we used to be different companies and we were brought together by some investment companies years ago. So we have different customized setups. So we are working in 3 different Navision versions, and also a lot of Excel to support the Navision. Our update licenses are running out, so we had to do something. We had a burning platform because soon we will not be able to update our Navision anymore, and that's not good. So that was on that basis that we needed a new ERP system. So we had an IT manager last year who were looking out, and he found Odoo and thought that that could be a good solution for us because from his analysis and gap analysis with other systems, he thought that we could have the same, but at a lower price. Because of the license structure. And then we also like that it's browser-based, so you have a better, you don't have the loading problems and so on, and you can easily access on your mobile phone and your tablet, which we think is the new way of doing your business. And then also we like the process-oriented view there is in Odoo, where you look on a role, I'm a warehouse employee, so you try to make the process easy for them. So you get the process orienting into your system. So that's why we chose Odoo instead of going on another Navision setup or something like that.
So and how did that translate when it comes to scope?
The scope was to get one ERP system, one joint ERP system for all the locations, but also one ERP system where you could easily access the data and turn the data from data to information, valuable information, because we need that to support our way in the market. Because Navision was very customized over many, many years, it's not very easy to get out new data, so we could see that we have difficulties in supporting the information we need to drive our business today from Navision, and we want to have a system where that's easier, so that we're not so dependent on fixed reports that was made years ago, but that you can take out and play around with the things the way you want them today. And we do that in Excel, but we would like to have that in the system instead of in Excel.
Well, that's quite positive elements for us. I have to try not to blush too much. Thank you. What would be the main goals? How could you describe them for the project?
yeah, because we were so customized before, we of course also wanted to be as standard as possible. So one of the goals that our manager or our CEO set for us was to go for as much standard as we could, both because then it's cheaper to implement. You don't have to pay a lot for consultants making programming, especially for you, and also because it's also easier to upgrade later on, and with the structure that you have in Odoo, where you get the new version every year, we hope that it will be easier to have a system that is updated and with where we have the new things easier than we did in Navision, where we don't have any new things. I think they are almost 10 years old, the versions we have.
You talked about expiring licenses of your legacy system. That means a lot of time-based stress. How did you cope with that?
Yeah, we had a very tough timeline because of this, and also because our CEO, he doesn't believe in eternity projects, so he wants us to go fast. So we had the proof of concept last year in November, and then in around March this year, we started up the project for real, deciding how to customize the things that we needed, storage locations and things like that, where to put in the information we need in order to on the sales orders, and how to build up our materials and all things like that. So we started up with the project in March, and then we went live on the first factory mid-June this year. So
in 4 months?
Yes. So
wow,
that was
that's impressive. Please give that a hand. 4 months. Wow.
Yes, that was quite quick, and I think that has been good, but it's also, of course, given us some complications. But yes, 4 months. So, but we could manage that because we had a project group from our side. So the management set out a project group with 3 internal persons, with myself handling all what we call CRM. So that's sales orders, purchase order, manufacturing orders, warehouse, and sometimes we also arrange the transportation. And then we had, I have a colleague, Henrik, who gave a presentation yesterday. He is handling the finance things, and then we have our IT manager who is handling the technical stuff. So making sure that users were having a user rights, and that we had computers working in the production area and all that.
At the origin, you're a compliance officer now. Isn't that a big scope for a compliance officer to cover?
So, once again?
You're a compliance officer at origin,
yes.
So that seems like a fairly big scope for you to cover.
Yes, but I think compliance, many people think of it as the legal compliance, but in our case it's because we are ISO 9001, ISO 14001, and OSAS 18001 certified. So it's because I have a knowledge about the processes in the company that I was chosen, and also because I have a background in CRM. So, yeah.
I think you had significant roles reserved for the partners?
Yes, we had a very close relationship also with our partners, because we couldn't do this so quickly without them. We started up with one partner from Germany, because there's not so many partners in Denmark, and we liked this one, Odoo Business Solutions from Germany. And we quickly found out that we needed a Danish partner also, because we have Anglo-Saxon accounting in Denmark, and in Europe most of people are working under, I think it's called the International Accounting something standard. I'm not the accountant, so, so their knowledge was limited on Anglo-Saxon accounting. So we decided to add a Danish partner also, who had more knowledge about that. And luckily, both partners took this as not a problem, but just an opportunity to learn more for both of them. So we have had a very close relationship with our 2 partners, but also a very clear responsibility. So we know that in order to make this happen, so So OBS from Germany is the implementing partner, so they have all the licenses, they do everything on the supply chain part, and also both programming and customizing and training and advising us, and implementing all programming. And then Odoo House from Denmark does the same on the finance side, but OBS from Germany handles everything that's all programming loaded into our setup, so that we know that nothing is messed up.
Okay, and those roles were established up front at the prior to the start of the project?
Yes, and then we have a dedicated project manager or consultant that we work close with, so we always know who to contact. And both companies have been very good at answering back to us very quickly, so that if we send a question, we get answers within at least the most 24 hours. So even if it's just a question, sometimes we have correspondence about how to handle some things, or how to set up our templates, or whatever it is. And sometimes also, of course, daily problems that we need help for correcting in the implementation when we went live. So we have a very close collaboration with the partners, and if they weren't so willing to support us the way they are doing, we couldn't have done it so quickly.
That sounds excellent. What could you share some of the successes that you can define coming out of this project?
Yes, we wanted to go as much standard as possible, and we actually succeeded this. We have everything in our setup, all the major. We have sales, we have purchase, we have the manufacturing things, we have the accounting things. So we have more or less everything that you have in an ERP system. Even though it's a small, medium-sized company, we have all the complexity. And we wanted to go standard, as much standard as possible. And we actually managed only with 3 major programming. One is on the manufacturing orders, because we are not a production line. So if something happens, or when it happens, something goes wrong, then we can shift around, split up operations maybe on 2 machines in order to meet the deliveries. So we needed some more flexibility on the manufacturing orders than Odoo offers us as standard. So that programming we had made. Then we also needed something on on subcontracting, because almost 90% of our products go out for subcontracting surface treatment before delivery. So, and Odoo didn't have any subcontracting features, or at least not something that we could use.
Yeah, you can do the work order.
I watched the presentation yesterday, and it's still not what we use, because we need to have it in the production orders, maybe in the beginning, in the middle, or in the end, and it's not the same every time. So we had a programming made for that also. And then the last programming, which is being made at the moment, is because we used to have time clocking of our production hours. Our blue collars, that's salary clocking in Navision, and going away from Navision, we needed a new clocking system. And Odoo standard is too simple for us, because we have different schedules for employees. I think at the factory we are working at it now, we have 11 different time schedules, so we needed something else. So we took another support program for that, not an Odoo program, and then we are getting a programming made so that all the data on the manufacturing orders, the clocking of times on the manufacturing orders, is taken to this other program, so that we can still look on the hours spent on the workers. So with the complexity of a company, we actually manage only with 3 major programmings, and otherwise it's Odoo standard, or Odoo standard with a little adaptations. So I think that's a huge success, and also I'm very happy for that, because then it makes it easier for us later on when we have to upgrade and so on.
Okay. If you allow, question of all questions, I learned that you are a former SAP user.
Yes.
So how do you compare with a little bit with that experience?
Yes, but I liked working in SAP more than I liked working in Navision, I would say. So, but I think what I like with Odoo is that it's so open. It's very easy to correct things. In SAP, if a product is meant to be delivered at a certain sales order, then it's for that sales order, and it's quite complicated to get it on another sales order, and that's very easy in Odoo, for example. So the openness and the flexibility of the system makes it easy to shuffle around so it supports your daily day. But of course, it also means that you need to know what you're doing, so you need to train your users properly or make sure they don't have the rights to mess up the system. So.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Wrapping up, I'm sure that there are also some elements that you would do differently if you would have to redo the project. Could you share that with our colleagues?
Because of the very, very quick timeline and the time pressure, we accepted that the users from the site where we started, they didn't have time. It was only 4 months for the project phase, and we accepted that they didn't have time at that moment to be a part of the project team, so we took the decisions for them. Which was good, because we didn't end up in a discussion. Yes, for getting on, moving on. But of course, it meant that when we went live, they only had seen Odoo and their processes a few times. So that was quite a wake-up call for them, and maybe also a little bit too stressed. So involving people is very important, but of course it's a combination on how many discussions you want to have. We were from management given the mandate to take decisions, and so if we had talked with our consultants and they said, oh, you should do it like this, then we were actually able to say, this is how it's done in the new system. And that was very good, because we had the mandate, and also we dared to take the decisions and then take the blame afterwards and the discussions afterwards. But of course, involving people is very important, training them, and we didn't have proper time for that. So that's why we are learning on the fly, and that's a little bit hard, but we managed. We have been running for 4 months, and as Henrik said yesterday, we sent out invoices, we delivered things, we got paid, our customer pays us, and we actually also paid our suppliers, so it hasn't been a completely disaster, but we are learning on the fly, and that's a little tough.
Okay, yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Give a hand to... Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for assisting to these sessions with openness and not only success components. So I can only invite you again, please consider strengthening further our ecosystem, of which you are part of, by sharing this type of stories, because they really strengthen the bonds between us. Thank you so much. Enjoy your day.